we listen to our body all the time. Like, oh, I need more sleep, or, oh, my stomach hurts, I should do this. But we don't listen to our emotions the same way we do as our physical cues of our body. It's a good thing.
That's profound.
Thank you.
That's, whoa, shook. That's big. Welcome to the Friendly Moms Club podcast with Jen and Karlee. We're the new mom friends you didn't know you needed.
We are creating a safe space to bring moms together, lighten the heaviness, and find joy in the everyday moments. Together, we will share our own experiences of being new moms while navigating the topics we wish more people talked about.
Join us every Monday to hear us skip the small talk and dive right into the uncomfortable.
Good morning. Happy Mom Day, Karlee.
Happy Mom Day, Jen. It's a beautiful day.
It really is.
It actually is. It's nice. You know what? I was going to say it's more likely to be sunny when we're recording, but that's not true because we have a lot lot of not beautiful days. But internally, I don't think
there's actually any. Yes, we're very sunshiny people internally.
Yeah. Are you beautiful inside today? Are we?
I don't know. I'm not sleeping well.
Yeah, you got a 4-month-old. The 4-month sleep regression.
Motherhood's hit me hard this last week, and I'm losing this fight.
You're not winning this one. That's actually looking back to when Henry was 4 months old. That is when things really went down the pooper. That's when people expect you to have your life together at this point, but hey,
they're 4 months, and I'm like, oh,
you're like, I don't have my life together at this point.
No, the first few months, I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah, the adrenaline is wearing off, and now you're like, crap, I'm actually really tired.
And I actually have 2 children now.
Yeah, you're like, wait, these are both mine?
I have 2, and I have a toddler. It's wild to think about still.
I know you have 2 under 2, and not just 20, 21 months, just snuck in there, 16 months when she was born. That's 2 under 20 months. I'm starting a new thing. 2 under 18 months. That's big.
Yeah.
Your poor uterus.
It.
Your poor uterus.
I know. I was so I started working out again, and I talked about this a little bit on social media, but I just love working out. It brings me joy. I feel good. It's a good stress reliever. My mental health, my mental well-being is so much better when I'm exercising and moving my body. And that's
how do you bounce back if
yoga.
You don't work out?
But that's
joking.
Yoga, going for walks, doing things like fitness classes with friends, like dance class. I love doing the dance fit cardio. But I also just like lifting weights. That brings me joy. I enjoy it. I like getting to lift heavier and heavier. Anyway, so I got back into it, and I was trying to do some core work. So I'm like, I need to, work on this because
fix that old thing.
And it just gives out now. I'll be doing a plank, and all of a sudden, 30 seconds in, I'll just feel like my whole core just fall down.
Well,
and
a 30-second plank is pretty damn intense. So
just
put that out there.
It's just, I'm not used to that. But to actually feel it caving when I'm doing certain exercises now, I was like, oh yeah, I had 2 kids very close together, and my body is still healing, and I need to give myself grace. It's that you forget sometimes. I know that sounds silly, but sometimes I forget that I actually birthed 2 humans.
That they were in there.
And when I'm working out, right, I'm just like, oh yeah, and then I go to do something, I'm like, oh no, core, still not good. Or I'll pee myself and be like, yes.
Henry tries to crawl back in. His new favorite toy is if I lay on the ground with my knees up, and then he opens them and closes them. He thinks it's so funny. And then sometimes he dives into me, and I'm like, dude, you can't go back in there. And then he
I was very unsure where you were going with this, and I'm like, what do you mean?
Wait a second.
Okay.
And then that's what you're pulls my shirt up and jiggles my belly, and he thinks it's absolutely hilarious. So then I always joke that he's trying to get back in, but
I mean, it was warm, comfy. There was on demand eating whenever they want, and it's warm and all cozy, and they're snuggled in there.
Happy little camper
right?
in there. He's
they
not
just get carried around everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, he still gets carried around everywhere. That's life with toddlers and a little wee one for Jen.
Yeah.
So today we have a fun episode. We have a motherhood coach on. Her name's Emma Rowbotham. She's another local gal to us.
Yeah.
She is also a mom under 2. She is a mom of 2 who also survived being a mom with 2 under 2.
Yes.
It's a mouthful.
And she experienced a lot of mom rage in her journey. And so that's what we were talking about today. But she had her own big personal growth and journey and around mom rage. Yeah. So she's going to share that with us today.
Mm-hmm. And so a little bit about Emma. She's a certified life coach, and she's now, certified leadership coach, and now she's a motherhood coach. She's also a yoga instructor, a meditation guide. Yeah. She's the real deal.
She has a very holistic approach to kind of those big transitions in motherhood, and she wants to help people go through these transitions, and
we need it.
Yes.
We need more of that.
Motherhood is hard. We know that. So having someone to kind of support you along the journey is huge.
Very important.
So,
and all of her information will be down below in the description box.
Yeah.
And before we forget, if you are not following us on Instagram, please go follow us on Instagram.
Yeah.
Today, the day that we're recording this, it's the last day of May. We are doing a diaper challenge, like a little friendly bet with the friendly daddies, that if we can get to 2,000 followers by the end of the day, they have to change all of the diapers for 1 month. So when this airs next week, we will know if we reached our goal. But either way, go give us a follow and you can follow along.
We hope you liked the episode today.
Yeah. Here's Emma.
Good morning. Happy Mom Day, Karlee.
Happy Mom Day, Jen. Whose turn is it to sing?
Yours.
It's a beautiful day.
Karlee does this every
you
episode.
You can sing for us if you sing.
It's a beautiful day.
Yay!
Oh, yeah, that was good.
All right, that was good.
We are here with Emma. So, hi, Emma. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
We are so happy that you are here today.
Yeah.
If you didn't catch it, I guess a few weeks ago, we did a Instagram live with Emma. She invited us on to talk about Matrescence. And then we asked her to come on the podcast with us because we had such a good time talking to her. And she just has so much knowledge and experience. We wanted to, what's the word?
Yeah, continue. Keep digging.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, we literally could have talked for 14 hours when we did our live.
Yes.
I mean, Jen and I have no problem talking, but like then when we talk with somebody who we like vibe with, and we're like, okay, we need to have her on the pod.
Yes. Well, let's just get into it. Why don't you introduce us?
Yeah,
Why don't you?
That was last time.
Yeah. So why don't you introduce us? Tell us a little.
We'll get there.
It was a long night.
Chug your coffee.
Okay.
Big sip. Yeah, big sip.
Okay. So why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your family and how you got into coaching.
Yes, thank you so much. So my name is Emma Rowbotham, and I am a mom of 2. I have a 3-year-old daughter. She's almost 4, and a 2-year-old son. He's almost 2.5. They are 17 months apart, and their birth and their close in ages broke me open in a way that I don't think I will ever recover from. And I have to say that the amount of work that I have done, the amount of emotional work, and just also like bringing everything that I've learned in the past couple of years as a mom into my coaching work has been so amazing. And just to be able to be here and to be not on the other side of it, because kind of going back to our conversation last time about matrescence, very much I believe that matrescence is a lifelong thing. So I'm not ever going to be like on the other side of being a mom. I'll always be learning and growing alongside my kids. But my point is that it took a lot for me to get here, to be able to understand myself in a way where I wasn't in constant cycles of shame and guilt around my feelings of being a mom in general, like how much my life changed becoming a mom. And then also the feelings that I had within my mothering experience of like a lot of anger, a lot of resentment. So I'm happy to say that I'm on the other side of that in the sense that I've done so much learning and so much unlearning about myself, but also about the institution of motherhood in the sense that mothering and motherhood exists in the society that we live in, which, if anyone forgot or didn't know, is a patriarchy. And so there's like tensions there. And there's so much to learn and explore in the lens of like motherhood studies that has really helped me. So that's me. And then in terms of coaching, I was already a coach before I became a mom, but I was certified as a leadership coach. So it was more like executive skills, goal setting, like having a personal development plan and how to communicate effectively. And all of those things, turns out, are really important as a mom as well, and as an evolving mom. So I know there's lots of different types of motherhood coaches out there. Some focus on certain like age ranges where I actually work with moms across the whole range of motherhood. I actually just wrapped up my 3-month package with a woman who is turning 70 next year.
Aww.
Yeah, so it's really cool to be able to work with women at different ages and stages of motherhood. And what I really focus on is the evolutions that we go through and the cycles of evolution that we go through in motherhood. So that's me, and that's how I came to coaching. And the way that I came to coaching was through education. So before I did my certification in leadership coaching, I was an ESL teacher for a long time. I taught English in Japan and New Zealand, and then I moved into working in universities. And that was when I first started doing one-on-one things. So I would work with students in big workshops about like how to time manage and how to write an essay. But then I would also work with them one-on-one about like how to actually learn and teaching them to navigate a system that maybe wasn't specifically set up for all learners.
Yeah.
So that was my taste of like what it looks like to work one-on-one with someone from a coach approach perspective rather than a consulting perspective, which is really about like drawing out people's knowledge that they already have of themselves, asking, prompting, and reflecting questions, not telling them what to do is a big one. So that was how I came into coaching. And then as my career progressed, I started doing more and more one-on-one work. I eventually left working in the tertiary sector, and I moved into nonprofit, and I did career coaching for women, most recently at the YWCA in Vancouver. So that work also helped me see moms for the first time. I wasn't even a mom back then, but I worked one-on-one and in groups with moms who were unemployed or underemployed. And I really started to get a sense of the specific challenges that moms have navigating their careers. And so when I went on mat leave with my first, I left the kind of 9-to-5 world and started my own coaching business that I've been growing slowly ever since, while also having 2 under 2.
Yeah, more babies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like your spirit, like who you are and who you embody, is somebody who just connects with teaching and coaching and like guiding. And are you also a yoga instructor?
I am.
See that?
Yeah.
So like you just have that, it just seems like that's the way you connect with people, is by like not like telling them what to do, but by like guiding them and coaching them along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And in my work, I work as a nurse. There's a lot of that same kind of relationship building to coach and teach and stuff. But something I struggle with, and I'm curious if you struggle with this as well. Do you ever get like imposter syndrome, like trying to help people and you're like, but I'm also struggling with this? Or do you feel like,
are you inside my head?
Yeah. Yes, I am. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I really do struggle with that sometimes in how I present myself on, especially my Instagram page, just in terms of like straddling that balance between guiding authority and a knowledgeable person that people who are struggling can come to and trust for some like, you know, helpful resources and helpful guidance, and also being like, yeah, this is really hard.
Yeah. Like, I get it. And it almost feels more like, for myself, it would feel more like not legitimate, but more like comforting and just easier knowing that somebody has either gone through it or is also going through it. Because if somebody has such a disconnect from your life, like the solutions they give you, like, you might not connect to them because you're like, well, you don't actually understand what I'm going through, you know? So there's also power in that same feelings of vulnerability and struggle that like, am I qualified to do this? Like those thoughts when it's like, actually me thinking that makes me so much more qualified to help people. Yeah. Anyways, just a little thing that came up as you were talking. And also, I don't know if you know this, but Jen's daughters are also, they're 16 months apart. So you're speaking her language as well over here.
Yes. It is
How's that
very
going for
hard.
you?
It is very challenging. It just is harder in ways that I didn't imagine. Like motherhood. Motherhood has been hard, and I expected it to be hard, but it's also just been hard in other ways that I wasn't expecting. And I wasn't expecting the second pregnancy and the second toddler to come so soon, or the second baby to come so soon. But I thought the baby was going to be the hard part, but now it's the toddler that's been the hardest part of the transition. Yeah, I feel like, as you said, there's so many different changes and evolutions in motherhood. And I'm just in a different a different one right now that's very hard. And everyone always asks me like, oh, do you think it was a good age gap? Or what do you think would be a better age gap? And I'm like, everything is different. Like you can't compare having 5 years apart to having 16 or 17 months apart because it's different and there's different pros and cons. There's different hards to all of those different, different age gaps. So there's no answer to that question that I can give you. So it's hard, but every aspects of motherhood is all hard. So we're going through it. And I am working on things that I never experienced before. And one of them is that mum rage. I didn't have this with my first, and I only am having it now, having my second. So it's interesting to me, like just the differences between the two that I've seen as well. There's a lot.
When you said, oh, the having 2 under 2 like broke me in a way I never expected, or whatever the wonderful line was, I was just like, Jen.
It is because
you're going through, I mean, you've also had like a very rough go lately. There's more than just them being so close in age.
I'm a little bit depressed right now. I messaged Karlee and I just said like I canceled plans this morning already. And just the last few days I've been in that state where like I'm living, I'm going through the motions, but I'm just not having those big emotions. Like I'm not smiling. I'm not like I'm feeling it very hard to actually connect with my kids. And like I'm there and I'm playing with them, but I'm not feeling like there's not that actual connection going on.
You're in a dark hole.
That's like the big, oh yeah, I need to get some help and I need to work through this and I need to, really dig deep into what's going on. And so that's where I'm at. So
motherhood is hard. It just kicks you in the ass over and over. but yeah, anyways.
Do you have a therapist that you like?
Yes, I have PTSD from my work. So I've had mental health struggles for years and years now, and I've done a lot of work. I did a month-long treatment facility where I actually lived in Kelowna, and so like it was like intensive therapy, group therapy, one-on-one, and it was really great. And so I have lots of tools and resources from there. And so I thought I was going to be very prepared for motherhood because I did this all before I had kids. I thought I was so prepared because I'm like, I've done so much work on myself. Like I know what it's like when I get depressed or have panic attacks. Like, I have been through hard things. Like I can do this. And then I just totally kicked me in the ass. And I was like, oh, wow. But I did know how to reach out for help. I already had, a psychiatrist, a psychologist. I had these resources in place already so I could easily access them when I needed to, which I think a lot of mums, if they've never done therapy, they don't know even how to get help. So they don't know how to talk about what they're feeling and they don't know how to get the help that they need. So they just don't say anything and they struggle in silence. And that's the part that just guts me because it's so hard. Like motherhood is hard enough. Trying to do it alone without actually talking about how you feel is just... It makes me so sad.
Even acknowledging and like validating your own experience, like being just able to say like, I'm feeling depressed. Like a lot of people, and we see this all the time, like they just don't have that ability to, and like no shame to them. It's just not a skill they've learned at this stage yet, but they don't have the ability to like name those big emotions or also just like know that that's what they're experiencing. So can you talk a little bit about big emotions and motherhood? Maybe you can share a little bit about your own experience. Like, were you prepared for the big emotions? Because like I wasn't. Same as Jen was like, I got this. Like I've done hard. And then I was like, whoa, that was not ready for that. The rage and the resentment and the tears and the depression and all of it. So
let's talk about it.
Let's talk about big emotions.
Let's talk about big emotions. So big emotions in motherhood. Okay, so I think it's impossible to talk about the big emotions without talking about that word matrescence, right? Which is the process of becoming a mom. It's physical, our body changes. It's emotional, our emotions change. And then it's also like psychological and spiritual because it's like the hormones too of just, the birth process and then like breastfeeding or not breastfeeding or weaning or when our period cycle, when our bleed comes back in. Like there's so many different hormones at play.
There's a lot going on.
And then also like societal structures and all of that. So the big emotions, I guess, to start with that I experienced were anger, rage, resentment.
The trifecta.
Resentment and self-doubt. Am I a good enough mom? Maybe this isn't for me. That kind of stuff. Self-doubt about my ability to cope. And then like at the worst times, I would say like despair. Like I remember saying out loud many times, I can't do this. And the thing about that is that like once we start to get locked into that belief, it like becomes our reality because, our beliefs and our thoughts, and then they start to drive our actions. So it really took a long time for me to kind of like pull myself out of some of those holes that those big emotions and thoughts and beliefs that I had about myself like led to.
Did you know when you first started experiencing them? Did you know you were experiencing them? Or did you have this moment where all of a sudden you were like this little person coming above and watching and being like, holy crap, what am I doing? Like, why am I acting this way or behaving this way or reacting this way? Or did you just know all along?
I think I was really, really enmeshed in it and in the deepest parts of it. And it was like my husband, actually, the one who, like, because our partners really see the shift too, right? Like who we were before and who we become during. And it's an interesting one for our dynamic. It's like a vulnerable share, but I'm so happy to share it in the sense that I personally did not grow up in a yelling home. And so I was not just simply recreating a pattern. And that was kind of like a warning bell to me. Like I wasn't just struggling with cycle breaking. It was actually something else. My husband did grow up in a yelling home. And so that created even more kind of strife for us because what I was doing in my big emotions was actually like re-triggering him. And so he wasn't able to kind of like see my anger and rage as neutrally as maybe he could have because it was bringing up his own stuff. It was really his observation of me, plus not so much like me being able to see above it all, but just like really not enjoying it, really not enjoying that season of motherhood and feeling really like kind of like that deep knowing of like, this could be better and I need help.
It's so interesting that you say that about your partner because I think that having a good partner when you're going through motherhood is just, I mean, we talk about this all the time, but having someone that actually knows you and can call you out on things like that is just something that we don't talk enough about. But
and
how
communicate it in a way that you receive it.
Yes, communicate it respectfully. Because I've been there. Like my husband and I have both had, like I've called him out on it and he's called me out on it in a good, respectful way. Respectful.
Well,
Thank you.
Yeah, it works.
No, but we recently had this and I had to sit him down and say like, I've noticed these changes and I've noticed that you are doing this.
Yeah.
And this is a real example that we've been together for 9 years and I have heard him swear more in the last month than I have in the 9 years.
Wow.
And so not necessarily is that wrong. I'm not saying you're not allowed to swear. Like it doesn't actually matter. But I simply said like, I've heard you swear more in the last month than in the last 9 years. Like in the total 9 years we've been together. Like that to me tells me that something is going on. And then he was able to say, okay. And then he talked about this with his therapist and said, my wife told me this. And then they started to work through like, why is that? And what's going on to cause this? And it's just that like having a partner that can actually see the different versions of you and nicely say if they're noticing any changes is just such a good huge support that we don't acknowledge and talk about enough, I think.
Or a friend or
it doesn't have to be your partner.
It has to definitely come from a certain person because like I know there's certain people in my life that if they brought anything up, I'd be like, you don't understand. And it goes back to that whole like really being in the trenches with them or have been in. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think it's nice when you can have that relationship with someone that you can. It's almost like someone's looking out for you too.
Before you guys had kids, did you guys talk about the family dynamics you grew up with and like whether or not you came from a yelling home and like if this was something that you guys were comfortable with and like was that a conversation you had before or did this just come out of nowhere when you had your kids and realized like, wait, we're coming from different sides here?
Well, we have our romance was very quick.
Yeah.
So yes, we had only known each other for about 6 months before we got pregnant with our daughter. We actually only got married last year, and I love so much that so we got engaged right before we got pregnant with our second. But just the confirmation of having gotten married after we had kids was like, okay, we're like even that much more committed. Like we know
Totally.
what this is like, and we
Yes.
still want to get married. But no, like we really didn't talk about a lot. Like we talked about our families and like just in that like getting to know you stage. And really we also like the reason why things happen so quickly for us, I think, is because we had also been in long-term relationships where we thought we were going to have kids with that person. And then it ended kind of like later on in our lives. And so we really had to do that work of like, who am I now? Who do I want to be with? Do I want to be with someone again? Do I want to have kids? So we did a lot of that work on our own, but we didn't really talk about our partnership and the way that we were raised when we were pregnant. And then once my daughter arrived, it was the pandemic and it was just so stressful that it's just like new parenthood is like, there's not a lot of time to be like, oh, wait, like, let's talk about like how we were raised. And
connection is very hard when you're in the throes. Like when you're in the depths of motherhood, that connection with your partner it's hard.
Everything feels like, reactionary.
Yes, everything
rather
is.
than like planned and like
and it sounds like too that you guys were still getting to know each other as adults and humans, and then you're also getting to know each other now as parents, like not just as a partner, and you're kind of doing all of that at once, and then throw in a pandemic and then being stuck at home with each other. Like, well, kudos for you guys for.
But I gotta agree, the getting engaged and getting married after having kids is almost like a. I'm not saying that's the way. Have babies and get married whenever you want to. It doesn't have to go in a certain order. But I'm almost like that is a good like a tell if your relationship is gonna be a strong one, because having kids puts a strain on your relationship.
Like when you stand up and get married after you've had 2 kids, especially 2 after 2 or 2 under 2, like that you guys are compatible.
Yes.
So that's cool.
I feel like we've gone on a tangent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Should we get back to mom rage?
Yes, we should.
Yeah, let's talk about mom rage. So mom rage, it's a real thing. We've all experienced it in different degrees. I like what you said before, the resentment, anger, and rage. I'm like, that is literally the trifecta of like unresolved emotions in motherhood, like that. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about mom rage?
The first thing I want to say is that I didn't experience it with my first either. It was the combination of the baby and the toddler together that really like brought it out big time.
That makes me feel seen. So thank you for saying.
Yeah. It's so hard.
Okay, but like, what does it mean if I did experience it with my first? Does that mean I'm going to be like Dragon Lady? Or if...
No.
Yeah,
Everyone reacts differently, and everyone has different big emotions that they struggle with. And I think it comes down to the expectations people had going into it too, that come into play about like what are what big emotions they struggle with the most is so individual. But mom rage is a common one. I think you're okay.
I'm going to be bliss mom. Okay.
I think you're totally okay and totally normal. Okay, so the first thing is exactly that, normalizing and actually getting comfortable with the fact that we get angry. We were not raised as women in both of you are like in your 30s? Yeah. So, like we grew up in the 80s and 90s, and like, were we raised learning ways to safely and healthily express our anger?
No. Negative.
Yeah. So whether it's like in the home or even the way that like anger from a woman is portrayed in through movies. Like even back then there was no social media. Think about it now, all the pressure that modern moms get, you're supposed to like have a 9-to-5 or be a mompreneur, or if you're a stay-at-home mom, you're doing like all these activities and loving it, and it's just like there's so much pressure to be it all and have it all together, and there's no room to be angry. There's no room to have an outburst.
Almost like there's no room for emotions in general.
Well, within the good mother myth, there is no room for anything other than, as you were saying, like I think a bit tongue in cheek, but like there's no room for anything other than bliss and loving being self-sacrificing and loving being nurturing and loving putting your children's needs first. In the good mother myth, that's what it is. So there is no room for anything else. We aren't provided that room by society's expectations, and through that social programming, we don't provide the room for ourselves.
Can we talk about this good mother myth before we go on? The good mother myth, I want you to define it after this, but also like it, to me, it seems like there's no room for mom rage in it. But you know what makes me mom rage more is hearing about the good mother myth. Like it just, that makes me want to rage. So can you just like, if anybody's confused, if they haven't heard that before, just like, what is that?
Yes. Okay. So the good mother myth comes from the sociological work of Dr. Sophie Brock. She is a scholar who's based in Australia, and she talks about the fish tank of motherhood. And so imagine literally that we're in a fish tank and we're swimming around. The water that we're in is society. So there's expectations around what a mom looks like. She is all giving. She is organized. She is self-sacrificing. She is nurturing. I don't know, what other things come to mind for both of you when you think about a good mom?
Just happy all the time.
Yeah. Like willing to sacrifice themselves, but enjoy that. And like they live off of being a martyr and like giving themselves to their family and like just having like the politically and the socially acceptable emotions of like, you know, being a good neighbor and, you know, baking pies and
being dressed not in pajamas all day.
Oh yeah, getting up,
having their hair
day
done and not just up in buns, having makeup on every day.
Dinner on the table every day at 6.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. And loving it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a myth. It's a myth, and that person does not exist. But that person, that archetype, is exalted everywhere. And so it's a archetype that society judge moms against. And then because of that society, moms judge each other against, and moms judge themselves against. Yeah. And so it's, to use Dr. Sophie Brock's words, she says, it's the tides we're swimming in. Like we cannot escape it because we're in this fish tank, which is our society. However, we can start to question the good mother myth. We can use our rage in healthy and unifying ways to start to make cracks in the fish tank. She has a really good little video on her website.
I'll link it in the description.
We will link it in the episode notes for sure.
And so just to kind of like segue from there, it's like the emotion of anger is not bad. All emotions, even the ones we've been taught are bad, are not. I love this perspective that emotions are actually like pure and they have different qualities of energy, but when they are healthily expressed, they create change. Like in the context of mom rage, like if we can harness the anger that we feel and we can understand why we feel angry, psychology, like a psychological perspective for anger, especially like mom rage, is underneath that is an unmet need. And so that's why working with a therapist can be really helpful to kind of like unravel, like, okay, what is the need that's unmet right now?
That's big. That's real big. Because a lot of times people don't even recognize, like you're saying, you don't know it's an unmet need. So then you're just angry.
Yeah. You're just angry because you're angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, okay, so the good mom myth, and then all emotions are neutral. Basically, they're pure, they have different qualities, but when they're expressed in a healthy way, they can create change. When they are repressed, that's when it's really difficult. And so that's another thing that I notice in my own motherhood rage. It's funny you were saying that, Jen, about your husband like swearing the most in the last couple of months. I had this experience last week where I yelled at my kids more in 2 days than I had like in the last like year or 2 years, like since kind of going through my most recent evolution through the 2 under 2. And because of all of the learning that I've done, I really was able to distill quite quickly, like, what is it that's triggering this? Like, where is my unmet need right now? For me, I really resonate with this concept of like the drip, drip, drip impact of unmet needs, or of like my capacity being drained as the primary parent. And also, I have been recently diagnosed with ADHD, which has helped me understand how overwhelming noise is for me, and how it creates a sense of boiling rage in my body. And so the drip, drip, drip effect is like, okay, think about an interaction with a toddler or 2 under 2. It's like, I can hold capacity for a toddler's tantrum and remain calm and cool and collected. And then, 5 minutes later, it's like time to go out the door. And then the baby's crying and the baby's had like a blowout. Okay, so I'm holding capacity for that again. The need is like dripping on me.
Yeah.
And then we go outside and toddler's having another meltdown about like not wanting to sit in the car seat or not wanting to be in the stroller. And so it's like this continual drip of my capacity to the point where I explode. And that's what was happening last week for me. My kids were very, very noisy and loud and fighting all day. And so it wasn't just like an explosion out of nowhere. It was like my capacity for hearing high-pitched noise is only so big. And so really starting to understand that, because I think in the moment, we can be so cruel to ourselves. We can be so unkind to ourselves when we do have outbursts as moms, because we love our kids, and because we know we can be better, and because we've been socialized to believe that we shouldn't be angry. We shouldn't have this emotion. When I kind of recenter myself and really see all of the things that lead up to the outburst, it's not just out nowhere. It's actually really clear why it's happening. And so it's like, it kind of gives me that sense of like, your anger and your rage right now makes sense. So that's kind of like getting into a strategy. I'm kind of like getting ahead of myself.
Good. That was going to be my next question.
Okay. Okay, so let's go there. So strategies, one thing I want to say about strategies is that we talked about like the unmet need, and the unmet need is often like really basic, like especially for 2 under 2. It's like, have I eaten? Have I showered? Have I
brushed my teeth?
Like, am I like constipated because I like haven't been able to like go to the bathroom by myself? Those unmet needs feel like so obviously when we have an outburst, it's from a dysregulation, right? So if we're thinking about like regulating our nervous system, there's regulated and dysregulated, and dysregulation happens when we have a stressor. And whether it's a literal tiger chasing us or whether it's a perceived tiger, our body doesn't know the difference. And so these unmet basic needs are stressors. It doesn't matter what stage. Like, I'm sure both of you throughout your days, and me included, even though I'm like, better in the sense of like, I'm not in the depths of 2 under 2 anymore. Like, there's still like a drip drip effect every day of unmet needs, and they compound, and our body sees those unmet needs as stressors. And so being really like compassionate to ourselves, it's like, I even want to roll my eyes at myself, because it's like, oh, like, give me a better strategy. But
it's a good one.
Dr. Kristen Neff, she's like the leader on self-compassion, has done lots of research about the fact that when we are mean to ourselves, that is also dysregulating. So when we are like shaming ourselves about the outbursts that we've had, it's just as bad as when we can't go pee, or when we haven't had like hot coffee, or, whatever those unmet needs are. So kind of to go back to that strategy that I was talking about. It's like giving yourself the space to be like, okay, this anger and rage makes sense. It is welcome here. And really just like allowing yourself to be, and not like being so critical to ourselves. It's easy to say, don't be critical to yourself and like be kinder to yourself. But what helps me is knowing that being critical to myself is also dysregulating.
Yeah.
Being kind is a way to bring myself back into a more regulated nervous system. So that's what's kind of shifted for me. It's not just about like, oh, I should do this affirmation because I'm a yoga teacher and that's what I know I should do. It's like, no, okay, I understand now through science that when I'm shitty to myself, my body doesn't get on board.
Yeah, it is dysregulated.
Yes.
It is not happy. And
I like what you said about that, like you're acknowledging it, you're validating it, you're like, because a lot of us, especially if you grew up in the 80s or 90s, like we just want to be validated. We never were. We still aren't from boomer parents sometimes. That like you're acknowledging it within yourself, and then instead of letting that the emotion of rage and anger then like compound into shame and guilt, and then maybe more rage or more sadness or whatever. We're acknowledging that emotion. We're feeling it. It's not a bad emotion. It's not negative. And then from that, we're able to like redirect into something else. And just that step of like acknowledging it, validating it, like it's so simple, but like I see it breaks the cycle. Like it just snips it, you know?
Yeah. And the more we try to push something away and push it down, the greater that it's going to come back.
Yeah.
So if you try to like, no, I'm not being angry. No, I'm still good. And like if you try to invalidate it for so long, it's only going to come back greater. Like you have to acknowledge it to be able to move through it.
And also accept that it's okay. Because if you're acknowledging it and you're like, oh, I'm so angry, I'm so rude. But then you're like, well, why can't I just be more calm? Why can't I just be like those other moms that don't have rage? Like you have to acknowledge it and also like tell yourself like it's okay.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to be like, yep, I just yelled. But then be like, and it's because I'm a bad mom. And like, I know I tell myself that narrative all the time. And like, I should, in air quotes, be able to not yell or not be angry or not be frustrated or not be passive aggressive to my husband. And it's because I'm a bad mom or because I need to do more work on myself. When really I just have to tell myself like, okay, you have an unmet need. This is okay that you're angry. And then...
Yes.
Because like in motherhood, you're never going to have all your needs met ever. It's just impossible with the nature of motherhood and even just parenting in general, depending on... I would say your style, if how hands-on you are. And yeah, you're always going to have so many unmet needs and noise. So like those together.
Yes.
I think one of the hardest parts that I find about this is that ability that you have to be like introspective and you have to stop enough to listen to what's going on. Like, okay, not stop literally, but you know what I mean? Like you have to be in a place where you can look into yourself and, okay, I'm getting angry. What's going on? I'm angry. Why is it? Like, and that I find is very hard for a lot of people, especially if they've never done any type of introspection or therapy or talking about their feelings and emotions to all of a sudden have to do this. Like, it's a really hard thing to do, which I think is great that you do this coaching because I think a lot of women just need help, like accessing and unlocking what those emotions are and what does that mean.
Being vulnerable is really hard, and like acknowledging how you're feeling is being vulnerable with yourself, regardless if you're going to tell somebody else. It's easier sometimes, well, a lot of the times, short term, to ignore it and pretend like it's not happening, but like that doesn't get us anywhere. That just gets us into bitter people that hate motherhood, which like that's not the goal here, folks.
That's not the name. That's not the name of the podcast.
No, that is not the name. Bitter old moms club.
We need to be more friendly to ourselves. And we talk about this all the time, and that's kind of like the whole thing about behind the friendly moms. It's like we need to be more friendly to ourselves, and like how can we do that? How can we encourage other people to do that? And it's hard, again, that imposter syndrome, because every day I'm like, oh wow, okay, I need to be friendlier to myself. And like it's a good reminder, but I'm also unkind to myself every day. Like
it's so hard. Like I say things to myself that I would never even think about another person. I wouldn't even, like, I'm here like like telling people like, oh, like it doesn't matter how you do this or that, or like you're still a good mom, or like you're a good mom regardless of whatever. But then to myself, I'm like, well, you suck. You're an idiot, you know, but like what? I mean, obviously there's reasons this goes on, but like it's so hard to be nice to ourselves.
You're
so
saying
hard.
it sounds simple when you say it, but
Yeah.
it's actually a very big thing
Yeah.
of that being compassionate to ourselves. So yes, it's what's the term? It sounds like a simple, like, oh yeah, just be nicer to yourself, but you have to put the work in and be willing to put the work in.
Yeah, and I loved what you were saying about like the difficulty in being vulnerable and the starting place of kind of like being vulnerable with yourself. That reminds me kind of like that important distinction between guilt and shame, because that's the other thing. Like yelling at our kids is not ideal. Obviously, we don't want to yell at our kids. But also it's inevitable that we will lose our cool sometimes because we are humans and we are raising a family of humans. Two things that kind of came to mind that I just wanted to surface. One was that really important distinction between guilt and shame. Because like after I yelled at my kids last week, I felt guilty. And guilt is actually a really good signifier of something is out of alignment and I need to change my behavior. Guilt is actually really helpful. It tells us when we need to apologize. It tells us like, I need to change my behavior in a certain way. Whereas shame is the spiral of going from I did something bad to I am bad. And that's kind of what you were talking about, Karlee. Like, okay, I did something bad as a mom versus that spiral that we can get caught up in, which is that narrative of I am bad or I am a bad mom. And that's a really dark place to be. And the only way to get out of that shame spiral is to share it.
Hey, that's what we're doing here.
Yeah, right? And so it's like, that comes from Brené Brown's work. And it's so powerful that like shame needs secrecy. Whereas when shame is brought to light, when we share our shame with others, it dissolves.
We've said this quote before in another episode that we did, but I had looked it up just so I could make sure I got it right. But it says, shame dies when stories are told in safe places.
Yes.
By Anne Voskamp. And yeah, we've talked about it before, but it's true. The more like shame can't live unless when you're actually talking about these things. And
I think it's from
it's
one
a very
of our
powerful quote.
One of our early episodes that we went into that.
Yes.
I can't even remember. This is episode 48. Wild.
Yes.
But we talked about that. Yeah.
But we have talked about the shame and guilt and Brené Brown. We love Brené Brown.
I think it's just so important for moms to have safe places to share their shame. And the key thing there too is like the safe place for a mom to do that might be a different mom's group. Like it might not be the prenatal group that you're involved with because of all being together at the same time and you've grown up together and your kids have grown up together. It might be, but it might be like a different group. So it's almost like there are different mom groups or connections that serve different purposes.
Like it might be your high school friend who you're still friends with who has older kids than you, and like that's who you want to share it with, and maybe they can also like empathize and validate that experience as well. And like I know what you mean about it not always being like your main mom group, because I know for us, like we met a really good group of moms on mat leave and all of our kids are like a month or two apart, which is great, so great for so many things, but sometimes it makes them not the people you want to talk to about these things because they're going through that same thing at the same time. So sometimes it's like you're offloading on somebody, like you're kicking them when they're down.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Or it's not something they're struggling with and you're at the same age, so you're like, well, why aren't they struggling with it? Like, I don't want to talk to you about it, you know? And, you know, whatever. So then that's when you find your mom friends that have older kids. And they're great for hand-me-downs, too. So you need to keep those ones close by. So
going back, like, ways to work through some of the big emotions, like mom rage, is talking about kind of identifying it and being compassionate to oneself. But I think that it sounds like another one would be finding that safe place to talk about it would be another key way to work through some of these emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like the awareness of it. A lot of people talk about like name it to tame it.
Yeah.
So just like
Yes.
saying out loud, like, I feel angry right now. Like, I feel rage. And even getting really clear about what that looks like in your body. So for me, it's like, I feel this boiling. Like, and even as I was talking about like that drip drip thing, it's like I can almost track, like it starts to boil in my feet. And then as my capacity gets drained from the overwhelm and the unmet needs of my kids being quiet, or less like really intense noise. Yeah. It travels up my body enough. And then I start to feel like a heat in my stomach. And then I start to feel heat in my chest and in my cheeks. And then it just like comes out. But having that bodily awareness of like how it moves through your body is a way to recognize it. And then what I've come to with my kids is actually start saying it to them. I'm starting to feel really angry right now. So I'm going to just go over here. I'm going to take a couple of deep breaths. I'm going to drink a glass of water. I'm going to roll down the windows. Sometimes in the car, because it happens a lot in the car, I'll say, I'm starting to feel really angry right now and I need to listen to some loud music.
Yeah, I love it.
So I'll turn on loud music. And that's starting to give them an awareness too, right? Of like, oh, funny that moms can feel angry.
Yeah. Wait a second. And like, what a gift to give them as well, that like you're talking about emotions and being vulnerable with them so that when they experience their own emotions, they can say like, I'm sad or anything, like I'm angry, because so many of us, we weren't raised to talk about emotions. We weren't raised. You talked about how anger wasn't like socially acceptable. Well, like for a lot of us, emotions weren't socially acceptable.
We were
like,
sent
encouraged.
to our room. We were sent to our room and we were left alone to figure out our emotions. So I think that's another important thing. So like naming it to tame it, regulating it as best as you can in the moment, like knowing that the unmet need is dysregulation, and then having tools in your tool belt for regulation in the moment of just like, what do you guys do? Just to kind of like share the tools. What regulation go-tos are you using these days?
My daily regulation is movement. So like working out, going for walks, like that's something I need to do on like a daily scale to like kind of just bring everything down. But I would say music, dancing, like when I'm really like filled with rage, I'm like, we got somebody filled with rage. There we go. Got her boobies. She's happy. That's the thing. She had an unmet need. Right? She did.
It's just, and now it's met.
But yeah, I was gonna say music is and dancing. So like we'll put the Wiggles usually on or Shania Twain or, you know, something silly and just dance it out, because
we say like when in doubt, dance it out. And I'll like put music on, and my toddler loves to dance. And we just go crazy and we like listen to music and dance together. And like honestly, doing that for like 2 minutes with her, we both feel better afterwards. So it's something that we can do together when we're both feeling a lot of emotions. We're like, okay, let's put the music on. Let's, you know, do this. Me personally, I like to read. It kind of just like brings my whole nervous system down, and I'm like, okay, after a few minutes I can talk about my emotions again, but I need those few minutes to really down regulate my nervous system to be able to look and see like what's going on, what am I feeling, and stuff like that. So I find reading is really good for that.
I love a good hug. That sometimes my hubby would be like, do you need a hug? Or he'll be like, we're hugging. And I'm like, I do need like a hug. Or he does this thing where he puts one hand on my chest and one hand on my back and he like rubs. I'm going to do it to you later. It's like deep compression, like really. And my friends and I used to do it in nursing school to each other all the time, because it's just like so soothing. It is next level. So that's a good one.
So
we're
good.
Into that. Yeah.
Thank you.
What about you?
So my whole journey this past year in my business started with cold plunge, which is an interesting segue. Yeah. I know it's not for everyone. And it's not something that you can do in the moment. That's why I'm also very obsessed with very quick breathwork tools.
Yeah. Yes.
But cold plunge for like sustained, and also when I found out that I had ADHD, and like there's all this research that shows that cold plunge actually helps you have a higher baseline of sustained dopamine. So I'm very into cold plunge. But it's not something that every mom can do all the time. I live near the beach.
Showers?
Yes, cold showers. Yeah. But even like taking the essence of a cold plunge. So like going to drink a cold glass of water, like when I'm starting to feel the rage bubble up, or even if I'm driving, like opening the window and like, you know, getting my hand out the window just to feel that like cooling
you can't
effect.
Just cold plunge anywhere. Like, oh, sorry, give me half an hour. I'll come back and just drive back to a cold. Yeah, it's not something you can. It's not a pocket practice you can bring everywhere.
No.
But yes, okay.
Yeah,
I like that, the essence, the like hand out the window. That's good. Yeah,
and like a ice pack on your chest.
100%. Opening the fridge and just like putting your face in there,
feeling the cold air.
You know what's funny now that you say this? When I used to work in restaurants, my like Zen den was going into the walk-in freezer, and part of that was because I was always sweaty and it was always really hot, and we had a huge patio, so we were always outside in like the blaring sun. And when I was like, screw all these people, I'm done with them, I would go and just sit or stand in the freezer room. And
so maybe there's more to that than you ever thought.
Yeah.
Your body was subconsciously knew you needed that like hit of cold, and it did it for you.
There's also humming is a huge one. Humming is so good.
Oh, I've never heard that.
Yes. So humming is very regulating because when we hum, we're activating the vagus nerve, which is like, you know, the longest cranial nerve from the base of the brainstem all the way down the spine. And it's like the powerhouse of regulating our nervous system. And it goes through the back of your throat. And so when we hum, we actually like activate the vagus nerve, which strengthens our resilience and our vagus nerve tone, which allows us to regulate, like go through highs and lows in a more regulated way. Because just to kind of bring it back to regulation is that, and this is what, like when I started my cold plunge journey and my deep dive into nervous system regulation around this time last year, I was under the misguided perception that I think many people kind of enter into this regulation space in, which is regulation equals calm, which is actually not true. Regulation equals I have the ability to ride the emotional highs and lows in a way that doesn't totally throw me off my equilibrium, so that I'm like super hyper aroused where I'm like pulsing with anxiety, or where I'm super hypo aroused where I'm literally like dead. So it's not about being calm all the time, but it's about being able to be activated in these different stressors of the day, but to come back to a somewhat regulated space and to navigate the highs and lows.
And so regulated doesn't mean not feeling emotions. It just means like living them, like experiencing it without
being able to go through the emotions. We talk about it when I did my month-long program, is the window of tolerance. And so that's really common, of like, you want to be able to have that window where you can ride the highs and lows in that window of tolerance, and it doesn't make you hypo or hyper. I was going to say aroused. But
that's the word. It's aroused.
Just
I'm like
thinking otherwise.
I have a person on my boob right now.
I'm so aroused. Okay.
Anyway, anyways, window of tolerance.
Yes.
We talked a lot about this, and like, yes, you want to be able to go through those highs and lows in that window of tolerance, and how can you shift your window of tolerance?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
what can you do to shift that window? And so, yes, I think motherhood initially makes it a very small window, and you get hyper and hypo aroused very easily. And so what tools can you use to increase that window of tolerance? So
exactly. And so to kind of like complete the trifecta of the strategies, like we talked about naming it to tame it. We talked about within that being kind to ourselves, because that's actually more than just like fluffy. It's actually regulating to speak kinder to ourselves. We're talking about like this ways to regulate and to increase our window of tolerance. And then the third part of it is to, as we are good moms, I use that in air quotes, but as we are intentional moms of the modern age, we know all about repair, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the critical part of it too, is to repair after the blow up, not only with our kids, but with ourselves. So critical, because that's where we build self-trust and we build our own connection to ourselves. When we have those moments of disconnect from our, our truest, most purest, authentic expression of ourselves, when we rage, it feels bad. It feels like we have broken a promise to ourselves, especially if we've gotten into that cycle of mom rage where it's like, you know, you're in that spiral of going to bed, replaying the day in your mind, thinking of all the things that you did that you didn't like, that feel out of alignment for you. You make your promise to yourself that I will not yell tomorrow. I will do better. You wake up and by 9 a.m. it's already out the window and you're yelling again. It can feel like we are in a cycle of breaking promises to ourselves. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to take that piece of repair that we have been, as millennial moms, we have digested a lot of content about how to repair with our kiddos, and we need to take that on board and repair with ourselves.
I've never even considered repairing with myself.
But you're right. It is like broken promises. Like, okay, I'm going to do better tomorrow. I'm not going to freak out. And then I freak out and I get even more disappointed in myself.
So no
and you're
wonder
right. It's like a broken I really like
the
that.
negative self-talk keeps going because you feel like you're not like forgiving yourself almost. You're not repairing with yourself. So no wonder you.
No, I really like that. That's a very good point.
We've talked about
repairing with kids. We've talked about that a lot. But repairing with ourselves, we haven't really.
Oh, moms always forgetting about ourselves,
right?
Classic.
Because we're told to forget about ourselves.
Just over here, like
we're told to put ourselves at the bottom of the list. So who cares about repairing with ourselves? Like, why does that matter, right? Like that's what we're told, to be the good mom. Like you put yourself last.
Joke's on them. To be a good mom, you're actually at the top of the list.
So to kind of put it back on you, if you think about how you currently repair with your kiddos, what can you take from that kind of like, I hate the word script, but like that kind of process or dialogue? And what would you say to yourself after your next blow up?
Good ones. I would. Do you want to go or do you want me to go?
Oh, no, you can go.
Yeah,
I'm thinking. I was looking ahead and thinking.
I would acknowledge, yesterday I said I'm not going to be passive aggressive or yell. Let's say, that's a good one. And I would say to myself, like, I had an unmet need. I wasn't acknowledging that I needed to go to the bathroom, which happens as a mom. You just hold it in.
Yeah.
And then, Peyton's giving me smiles. So I would say, like, I had an unmet need. The anger was okay. I would have already done all of that. The, like, acknowledging, like, I'm mad because I have an unmet need. And then I would say, next time, I am going to go to the bathroom and relieve myself before whatever it was I was doing, making dinner. Give myself a little high five. Be like, you're a good mom. Yeah, little self-hug.
Totally. You're a good mom. And that thing that we're taught too is like telling our kids that we love them no matter what, right? Yes. Like that's a big part of the repair piece too. It's like no matter what you do, no matter how big your tantrums are, no matter how you behave, I will always love you. Yes. And I think that's a critical piece of the self-repair too. It's like no matter what you do, no matter how you express your unmet need, I am here for you, Jen.
It's so
interesting here for you.
Because that's actually what comes to mind is like I would tell myself that I love myself. And that's one of my biggest struggles is that I don't love myself right now. And so it's playing a bigger role than I think I have ever imagined. But I keep telling myself, I just don't love myself. I say this to my husband all the time. Like, I don't love the way I look. I don't love the way I feel. I don't love this. But how sad is that I'm telling myself that every day? Like, how am I ever going to be able to move forward and do all these things and regulate my nervous system if I keep telling myself I don't love myself? So it's a good place to start of that talking every day about I love you.
Yeah. Quick, put you on the spot. Name 3 things you love about yourself. Yeah.
I love my vulnerability that I'm willing to talk about all of my
I love that too.
Thoughts and emotions.
Yeah.
I love the type of friend that I am and that I truly care about others and that I want to be there for them and support them any way that I can. And I don't want to say my job, but I love what I have built my life's calling to do and to help others. And that I pursued my passion, yes.
Yeah.
But I love what I get to do in my job and using that ability to be there for others and be vulnerable to help them in their time of need.
Good.
Those are 3 things.
Yeah. Well, those are 3 things that other people love about you too. So
okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And I really want to just like hold space for that, and also like really acknowledge that it's okay to not like the way that you look, or to not feel comfortable in your body after having 2 kids back to back. It's okay.
Or even one. Yeah.
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 Right? Or
one, two, yeah.
Totally. Like just, it's okay to not feel comfortable, because I think there's been this pendulum swing from, first it was like, oh, we need to bounce back and we need to completely have our like pre-baby body, whatever. Then there's like this other swing to the totally opposite side of like, you just need to be fully like so in awe of what your body did, and you just need to accept it, and you should just love your just love your body, because I really struggled with that. I did not love my body. I did not tap into that sense of pride of like, oh, I pushed a baby out of my vagina. Well, like for my first child, I really I tried to push for 8 hours, and then she was pulled out with forceps. So even that metaphor didn't help me. I didn't feel empowered by that. And my second child was a elected cesarean. So it's like I had a lot of body stuff about like the empowerment that we're supposed to feel. And I didn't feel that way. Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of like touch on that and just say like, it's okay to not feel like,
thank you.
Yeah. And it sucks. It sucks to feel uncomfortable in your body. And it sucks to not have the time to do, and the energy to do the things you know you need to do, or not need to, but to do the things you know you want to do in order to change. Like it's okay to want to change the way not only your body looks, but the way you feel in your body.
That's the biggest thing is movement. My body doesn't move the same, and I notice that every day. You can't escape the way your body moves. And so if every time you move, you're like, this doesn't feel the same, and this is harder, and this is uncomfortable, and I'm feeling things. It's
even like putting your shoes on when you're like, I used to be able to bend over and not feel layers of skin and fat in between me and putting my shoes on, you know? Like it's just, and it's not a bad thing, and it's not a good thing. Like, it's just a thing. You just, you don't look like you don't look like what you used to before baby, and maybe you won't. I mean, this is for both of us. Like maybe we won't, but like we don't have to like hate ourselves, but we also don't have to love ourselves. We can just like physically, we can just exist in this neutral.
Well, it's like we talk about this with Matrescence as well, just that you're not going to be who you were before you had kids. Yeah. And so we talk about this in the sense of like who you are changes, but that includes the physical being as well. Like I'm not trying to get back to what I was before having kids. Like I realized that I am a new me, and I am working through what that means, and I'm just not comfortable. So how can I make myself comfortable? What would that look like? And so that's something that I'm working through right now. Is there anything else that you wanted to share that you really think people that are listening should know about this, these big emotions and mom rage?
I think the key is it makes sense. Your big emotions as a mom make sense. Even the deepest, darkest parts of you have something to say. And it's okay to make space for them and to just like almost befriend them and get curious with them. Like
to listen to what they're saying.
Yeah. Like if I were to give you kind of like a homework assignment, it would be like, okay, go away and have a cup of tea with your mom rage and really get to know her and understand like what it is she wants you to know. What is she scared of? How is she keeping you safe?
Yeah. No, I really like
that.
I
like that. I like that a lot. Have tea with ourselves. We'll have
should.
to. Yeah. I love tea.
I think if you want to grow as a person and grow as a mother, you need to be able to look into yourself, and you need to be able to befriend those emotions and truly listen to what those emotions are all telling you and what they are all about. And so I think that that's big. In order to grow and go through these phases of motherhood, we really have to start listening to we listen to our body all the time, like, oh, I need more sleep, or, oh, my stomach hurts, I should do this. But we don't listen to our emotions the same way we do as our physical cues of our body. It's a good thing.
That's profound.
Thank you.
That's, whoa. Shook. That's big.
Anyways.
Yeah. All right. Well, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and a little bit about your coaching business so that they can know what they're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's so funny. I was like, oh, Jen, you sound like my ideal client right now because you're having all of these questions about.
I probably am. Yeah.
Yeah. So as I said at the top of the show, I work specifically with moms going through evolutions, trying to figure out what their next chapter of motherhood is going to look like. So you can find me on my Instagram page. It's emma.rowbotham.coaching. And my website is the same without the dots. So it's just emmarowbotham.com.
We'll put these all in the show notes. So if you're listening, you can go to the show notes and you can link right to her Instagram and her website.
Yeah. And I have my main offering that I have with moms is my signature 3-month coaching program, which is called Motherhood Evolved. Yeah. And we go through a process of understanding the mom's deep vision for her future self, what that looks like, what that could feel like, what that smells like, really tapping into their subconscious and their senses and understanding like, okay, if I can imagine this new version of me, it can be true. Reflecting on what has brought them to this stage of where they are now and reflecting on how they want to enter into this new chapter. And then where the like traditional coaching starts to come into play is when after we've done that deep reflection and that visioning of the future, it's holding the mom accountable in a really loving and sacred container to experiment and to try new things and then to come back and talk about, okay, what worked, what didn't, what are you making space for, what still needs to be uncovered. And then from that process, really taking aligned action in their lives. And then the last component of the program is learning how to maintain momentum. One of the big things I hear a lot from moms is a fear of like falling off the bandwagon, so to speak. And maintaining momentum is not something that I tell you. It's not like a 3-step process that I have, a magic silver bullet, but it's a co-created plan that you come up with through my coaching prompts and coaching expertise to really help you understand what maintaining momentum in your life as a evolving mom looks like for you within your unique context, within your unique family dynamics and all the rest. So it's really customized and it's just so beautiful to walk with moms through those deep evolutions because I know what it's like and I've been there and I had a motherhood coach during that time as well as my therapist and they were both so important in different ways.
I love that.
Yeah.
This just goes back to smashing the patriarchy. Like finally women are sort of getting a little glimmer of what we actually deserve because y'all know if that men needed this, that it would be free and included and celebrated. But
we're getting there. We're working on it. I think that's so amazing. We're so glad that you were able to come on the show today and we hope everyone learned something and can take something away and it is okay to have these emotions. Have tea with them. I think that should be
tea with them. Tea
in the title of the episode. Have tea with your emotions, something like that. But thank you so much. And
you're welcome.
That was great.
We will see you in 2 weeks,
everyone.
Thank you.
Happy Mom Day.